The tabletop takeaway.
Game mechanics on display.
3 designers share the stage.
Pick a genre and we'll play.
The tabletop takeaway.
Welcome back to the Tabletop Takeaway. I'm Charlie McCarran.
I'm Trevor Muller-Hagel.
And I'm Ananda Gunaratna.
And this episode, we're going to talk about So Clover. This is the third game we've played in our series on word association games.
That's So Clever. Oh, wait, no. So Clover.
So
Sorry.
Clover. Yeah. It is a very clever game, though. And one of my favorites. And how this game works, it's fully cooperative. And there's a first phase where you're taking your personal little clover leaf board and writing down clues on it based on 4 random cards that you get. The cards are square, and they have one word on each of the 4 sides. And you put 4 cards in a 2x2 grid, and their arrangement tells you what you write on the outsides of these clover leaves. So say you had dog and cat right next to each other, then you would probably put pet, which is very lucky if you got that.
Oh, man.
Usually they're two very random words.
Like milk and stylized.
Yeah, milk.
I'm still upset about that.
Yeah. In which case, Trevor would write Oreos.
Yep, because Oreo stylized milk.
Yep. So after everyone writes their clues on their clover leaf, you take all your cards off and shuffle them up, add 1 random card for throwing people off, and then one at a time you look at people's clover leaves and try to guess how their cards were arranged when they were looking at them. So you put your clover leaf in the middle. Everyone as a group kind of decides, well, let's see, Oreos, what would go on the side? Well, milk should go on one of these corners. And you're trying to arrange this 2x2 grid in the best possible way. And then when everyone's satisfied or they've given up, then you guess, did we get it right? If you got it right, awesome, you get full 6 points. But if you got it wrong, you still have 1 more chance, and the clue giver will just pull any cards that are wrong off, or even if they're arranged in the wrong way. And yeah, it's a really funny experience on both sides, especially as you're watching someone, watching the group like talk through what the heck you were thinking when you wrote these clues down.
Bronze and fountain.
Yeah.
I don't know about bronze and fountain.
Yeah.
And
landscaping,
Landscaping,
obviously.
oh, yeah.
I think that might be one of the best aspects when compared to the other 2 games that we've covered, because in just one, the person who's guessing, I mean, okay, so in word association games, it is really fun seeing people's thought process, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Just like, okay, well, why are these words associated? In just one, you don't get to see the person's thought. Well, you can see their thought process if they think out loud when they're trying to guess what the word is, but sometimes they don't. In code names, I guess if you have a big group, you might be able to see people's thought process, but if you have a small group or people who aren't very talkative, you won't. But in So Clover, it really, you're going to see the people debate over what goes where. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's very good at getting people to talk through why they think certain words are associated or not, and everyone gets a turn as the observer, I think it calls them, who just sits back and listens to people debate over the thing that they've created, which is fun. It's like,
oh yeah, man, I was very engaged with you 2 guessing mine because I was like, oh God, don't do that. Oh yeah, you got that.
At one point, we maybe had it right.
You almost had it perfect, and then like, no, that can't be. Like,
no, that can't be. Yeah.
But there's something very inherently engaging about hearing people giving feedback of some sort.
Oh,
on,
yeah.
on something that
On something you did.
on something
Yeah.
you did, whether it's you have a book writing group and you review each other's work, or you play test your games and listen to feedback. And I think one of the great things about word association games, and one of the things that So Clover really brings out, is sort of this sense of getting feedback on what you've done. Right? I think that's
Yeah,
my takeaway.
and-
That's
Yeah.
a really good. That's
Well-
really good. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I don't necessarily like the spotlight when I'm playing a game. Like, just one really puts you on the spot as the guesser.
Oh yeah.
You have to,
You have everyone's attention for
yeah,
one.
and you might screw it up for the group.
Yeah.
It's still satisfying to play just one because it's the fun aspect, but you're kind of like on the spot and time pressure. Whereas So Clover, you are on the spot, but it's from something you already did, and now
Yeah.
you can
It's
see
in the past.
see if your plans paid off.
Well, and also it's the other people who are talking about it, not you.
Right.
Like, in just one, everyone else is dead silent while you are figuring things out, right? You might be talking through your thought processes, but it's just you monologuing in front of a crowd.
Right.
Whereas in So Clover, yeah, you don't have to talk. You don't talk through anything. You just listen, and so that you have the spotlight in a sense. But in another sense, the spotlight is on them because they're the ones doing something.
Yeah, your work is on the spotlight, right?
Yeah.
Not you yourself.
Yes.
No one's looking to you and asking you questions or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, this is the thing that I made. Now go over it and see what's wrong with it or what's right
Yeah.
with it. Yeah.
So sorry to just elaborate a little bit on my takeaway. I think finding ways for people to give feedback in games, like and as you point out, to have everyone give feedback as a group to one person, is really fun and rewarding. And finding more ways to do that would be great. I don't know how it would work outside of this style of word association game, but I'm sure there's a way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost like if you could plan a tactic or something, and other people can respond to that somehow, or yeah.
I mean, so I had a game I was working on a while ago called Crashlanders, which was about a bunch of aliens trying to build a spaceship, except they all speak different languages and
Tower of Babel.
have different understandings of what needs to go into a spaceship. So I'm I'm wondering if maybe revisit that with a focus on feedback. Like, I build a spaceship and the other players critique it.
Oh,
That would be cool.
interesting.
I like that.
And so they all have hidden information almost.
Yeah. Well,
Or hidden knowledge.
no, yeah, that's the idea. They each have little bits of information about the rules of space flight. And so, from their perspective, there might be something wrong with your spaceship you don't know about because you don't know one of those rules.
Right.
And then they have to find a way to get you to fix it.
Yeah, even if it's adding a part or removing a part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
So-
fun.
And I think the part that would make that fun, beyond just the player's own rules, it's trying to think about how would Ananda think through this problem and develop it.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the thing we were kind of talking about in the Codenames episode about, you're trying to mind meld with this
Yeah.
person,
Right.
And why it's so satisfying when you do. It's like, oh yeah, I bet Ananda would have done this as a clue, or yeah.
Yeah, creating moments to mind meld is very difficult. Because
in a not
Yeah.
word game,
right,
party game,
right,
type.
right. So yeah, for in this instance, you have multiple people who are attempting to mind meld with one person, and so you can actually discuss what you think that person might do.
Right.
But you also think just logically what you would do if you were that person. And so what I would have done, I wouldn't have done this, but you also need to think empathetically, what would the other person have done? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you can get that feeling in any game maybe that has some hidden information about what would Trevor have played down here as
Why did he not do this?
That's something that you actually, that's pretty core to these, because you see you have two words, you have a word linking them, But then you look at them and you're like, okay, that word kind of makes sense for these two words. But if you're choosing a word to link these two words together, why on earth would you choose that word as opposed to like this other more obvious word?
Yeah.
Right. And it could be they just didn't think of it.
Right.
Which is great.
Yeah, which is really funny. Yeah. I think my takeaway, I love these kind of games, and because I like introducing them to people who aren't like big, huge board gamers. And I think for me, the takeaway from So Clover is the physical component is kind of fun.
Oh,
it's like
it
the
is.
4-leaf clover. They could have done anything. It
Yeah.
could have been abstract, whatever.
And you just know that someone just accidentally had their E look like an O one time, and like, So Clover, what's that? Like, oh, it's supposed to be so clever, but I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
Now let's leave the whole thing around that.
The name and the clover leaves.
I don't know if that's true, by
They-
the way. That may not be the
Who
case.
Yeah,
knows?
this is
But-
complete speculation.
It's complete
Speculation.
speculation. I do
But-
not know the designer. I don't.
Yeah,
we are not a good source for like how the designers actually came up with
No, but we can theorize.
yeah. So yeah, I think for me, I'm realizing about getting people to buy into certain games, and I think like being a store owner would be really helpful to be have that perspective as a designer too. Like
Ooh,
trying to pitch games just to sell to people that are just random, and it's like, what is the hook, or like the physical hook, the name hook, whatever it is. Like it could be the most awesome game ever, but if it's just mechanics and you can't really explain it in a fun way,
You should explain it
Then-
in a functional way.
yeah, functional, yeah,
Yeah.
functional versus fun.
Yeah.
Were you in that talk?
Fun versus functional.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I think it's just fun to think about like what could be the funny thing that makes people laugh, or
Right.
that would get them to play this game that they might not otherwise play.
If you can create an experience that causes someone to make an audible response that is good, that's a good game. And it could be, oh my God, that's awesome. Or like, ha, that's great. And, whatever it is. Like, if you can create a game that makes someone do that, and honestly, word association games are very good at getting people vocal. Obviously, Just One has a harder time with it because it is one person reacting, but Codenames and So Clover both have that kind of, you're discussing things, figuring things out, and then getting excited about something that, oh, wow, that worked? Okay, great.
Yeah.
The moments of discovery. I
Yes.
think you mentioned before, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, we could save this for the next episode, but there's a lot of word association games out there. So I think if you're designing one, you do need something to stand out, either
Yes.
component wise or like some really interesting twist.
And honestly, all of these seem to be flipping over parts of the word association template. Like if you're starting with Codenames, then going over to Just One really inverted a lot of what was happening there. Then going even into So Clover from Just One, you're inverting the process again in a different way. And so it's really interesting. Personally, my takeaway is going to revolve around the number of things that you're doing, and you have head down moment, right? Where you're all in your own little silo and you are trying to create this puzzle, right? You're kind of a puzzle master for a moment, trying to figure out how to like help people figure this out the best, because you're all on the same team. You want to get the highest score. But it's tough. And then for me, we all did it at the same time. When it got to me, I almost couldn't remember the cards and what they were. And I was like, oh God, do I remember? Like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's why you have the clues to help you remember.
To
right?
help me remember.
Yeah.
But actually, that's that reminds me of so another thing that's a little bit different about So Clover than the other games is that I guess the word association puzzle that you present to players has multiple parts, and
Right.
solving one part helps you in the other parts.
Yeah.
So like in Codenames, figuring out one of the words doesn't really help you that much in figuring out the others, because if you're wrong, your turn ends, and if you're right, it's like, okay, well, I got the most obvious word, so what's the next one? And in Just One, there's only one puzzle. It's what is the word?
Right.
But in So Clover, the puzzle's divided up into 4 pieces. And once you've figured out one of them, that helps you a lot with the others. So even if you're uncertain about a particular association, you can go and solve different associations to eliminate certain possibilities.
Yeah.
And use that to figure out the missing pieces from the one that you had trouble on.
Yeah.
Which is really nice from the perspective of the people solving the puzzle, because it gives them avenues to explore if they're stuck.
Oh, yeah.
Which doesn't happen so much on, like in Just One, if you're stuck, probably what happens is eventually you give up.
Yeah. And honestly, just to kind of build a little bit, Just One, every word is possible, right? You don't know all the cards and every word on every card in Just One. But in So Clover, you have 16 words, right?
Well, technically 20.
20? Oh,
Because
20,
you have
because
an
of the
extra-
extra card. I forgot
yeah.
about the extra card. But yeah, so you have 20 words that are solving for 4 words.
Yeah.
And so you have a finite supply, and you're not trying to think outside the box necessarily. You're trying to think logically, almost like an induction situation, how this fits into this puzzle. Which, yeah, it's very interesting.
And I really like that point. I will say, there as an addendum, I think in Just One, the same process happens of, oh, this clue helps me get to this clue,
Sure.
but it's happening all in your head. I mentioned, like, oh, once you figure out this one word, oh, this word reinforces that, this reinforces that, and it's finally like, oh, everything clicks.
Yeah.
But I think in general, this is making me think about like co-op games and how could they make you get that feeling more of like, ooh, we're making progress here. So this helps us make progress over here and over here versus like I'm just got co-op games on the brain, but like a lot of co-op games, it's just surviving or trying to stay alive as a group or whatever the case may be. But how could you incorporate more puzzly elements where it's like, oh, because we did this is going to let us do this to this.
Sure.
So
a big meta puzzle.
So you feel like you have more progression.
I feel like
as a
Charlie's
group.
trying to give me advice for my game right now, which is really great and helpful.
Well, I'm looking at you, but
yeah, well, no, because I'm working on a co-op called Archmagus at the moment, and it's like, that I have individual puzzles and I have a big puzzle, but I don't have steps to making it interesting choices. And it's actually, I think it's a really good point just for co-op games, and obviously we're diverting a little bit from just word association, but most word associations are team or co-op driven. Because you want people to guess the word. I don't know if there's a word association game where you don't want someone to guess what you put down. That seems like a weird dynamic. But maybe it's possible and could be fun. But yeah, co-op games are fascinating. Trying to find those puzzles and those moments to like create a progressional puzzle. I like that.
Well, cool. I think that is it for So Clover. And tune in next time for our bonus episode where we will talk about word association games in general.
Hey, thanks for listening to The Tabletop Takeaway. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So please tell your friends and visit our website at thetabletoptakeaway.com, where you can suggest games and mechanics for us to cover next on the show.